Okay, I'm responding in a video because you're putting quite a few comments to me, and it's just easier to reply like this than constantly go back and forth. Because in one breath, you're saying to obey God is to love God, but in the second breath, you're saying stuff like this. By keeping the 10 Commandments, you are saying that Messiah died for nothing. He is the completion of the law. Okay, if that is true, then and I want to read some scriptures to you. I'm not trying to teach you. I want to know how do you read these scriptures? How do you read these verses? In Ephesians 2, where okay, I'm going to start verse 10 because a lot of people like to quote 8 through 9, but they don't quote 8, well, sorry, not 8. They don't quote 10 to later on. So I want to know what you think this is talking about. For it says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Messiah Yeshua for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them." What are the good works that he prepared beforehand that we should walk in them? How is it not the 10 Commandments? Because isn't that his righteousness? Isn't that what scripture defines as good? Because the opposite of the 10 Commandments, right, would be breaking them. Like murder's not good, right? So like there's a difference between the bad works, good works. So what good works are we supposed to be doing? Is it to be the good works we create in our own minds? Is it to be self-righteous works? No. That's what I don't understand. So that's why I'm asking you, what do you make of this? Okay, and then, "Therefore remember that you once Gentiles in the flesh, who are called uncircumcision by what is called the circumcision, made in the flesh by hands, that at that time you were without Messiah, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, and strangers from the covenants of promise." What are the covenants of promise? That Messiah's blood reconciles us back to. Because the whole plan of him dying, wasn't it to bring us back to God and to bring us back to the 10 Commandments? Because doesn't even Luke 1:72 through 79 talk about the mercy of God? What's the mercy of God? Have you read Hosea 6:6, where it talks about, "For I desire mercy and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings"? And then when you read verse 7, it says, "But they, like men, have transgressed the covenant." What covenant is he talking about? What was the covenant given long ago that Israel was supposed to keep and that we're supposed to keep as well? How is it not the 10 Commandments? That's what I don't understand. Like that, this doesn't make sense. But anyways, "Having no hope and without God in the world, but now Messiah Yeshua, you who once were far off have been brought near by the blood of Messiah." And how do we know? It's like, how do we know that this is talking about the 10 Commandments? Well, when you read the first few verses, doesn't he say here, so this is what Paul says, "And you he made alive who were dead in trespasses and sins." So when we're believers, don't we become born again? When we become believers, isn't there some sort of change that happens to us if we listen to the conviction from him on our hearts to obey, right? "In which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit who now works in the sons of disobedience." So we used to be those things. If we're genuinely in Messiah, we are no longer those things, right? So what does it mean to be a son of disobedience? That's what I want to know. Can you answer me that? Who are the sons of disobedience? "Among whom also we all once conducted ourselves in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, just as the others. But God, who is rich in mercy, because his great love with which he loved us, even when we were made dead in trespasses, made us alive together with Messiah." So, what's the conversion that's supposed to happen? We're supposed to stop sinning, right? So, what's sin? Doesn't scripture define sin in 1 John 3:4? Doesn't scripture say that sin is transgression of the law? So, I'm not talking about sacrificial law in my post if you watch my videos, and it sounds like you do because you commented on that one, and I don't believe this is the first time that you have. And where do I ever preach to keep the sacrificial law? Aren't I just preaching the 10 Commandments that we're supposed to be preaching and teaching? who's great? Who's going to be great in the kingdom of heaven? Who's going to be least? Didn't Yeshua define who's great and least in Matthew 5:19? Great will be those who teach and keep the 10 commandments. He doesn't say the 10 commandments, but how do you know it is the 10 commandments? Because there was something that Galatians 3 talks about where Yeshua basically put an end to the law. But what law is he talking about? The law that was added. What was the law that was added because of transgression? Wasn't it sacrificial law? Because doesn't scripture show in Deuteronomy 5:22 that he added no more to the 10 commandments? So shouldn't this tell us we should be keeping the commandments and teaching others to do so? Because who's least in the kingdom? Isaiah 66:24. Do we really want to fulfill that? I mean, if you're a believer, I don't believe you want to. But anyways, so you want to say about obeying God is loving God. True. So why don't you believe in what 1 John 5:2, verse 2 through 3 says, where it says, by this we know that we love the children of God, when we love God and keep his commandments. What commandments are we supposed to keep? For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. Is it a burden to not murder? Is it a burden to not lie? Is it a burden to not steal? Is it a burden to not commit adultery? No, so shouldn't that tell us that those are the commandments we're supposed to be keeping? But anyways, I have one more for you. In Matthew 7, when he says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. So how is this in regards to people who are keeping the 10 commandments? Well, it says lawlessness, because what's the opposite of keeping the law? Wouldn't it be transgressing or breaking the law? So who is he telling to depart from him? Who? Is it going to be those who are walking in the Father's righteousness and teaching men to do so, teaching others to do so? Or is it going to be those transgressing and teaching others to transgress his commandments? When he's talking about in Paul's letter, when he says he's the completion of the law, what law is he talking about? How are you going to understand anything if you don't understand the difference between Horeb and Sinai? How are you going to understand this if you don't understand what Paul is talking about in Galatians 3? When he speaks negatively of the law, what law is he actually talking about? Why would he speak negatively of the 10 commandments? Have you really pondered what the 10 commandments are? Like, do you really understand what they are? Because it's do not lie, do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not have idols, graven images, and things like that. So why would that be put an end to? Why would we not be telling people to keep those? Aren't we supposed to be keeping them ourselves? So, anyways, I know that was a lot of questions, but I hope it helps.